having this event. We think it's incredibly important that our community continues to build these localized relationships with the people who are continuing to shape our community as we shape the community with them. And everything we do, especially here at the center, is rooted in Palestine. And so we do want to acknowledge the fact that a lot of members of our community and their families have lost an entire school year. I'm reminded of this because of a conversation that we've had with one of the Rutgers students and her fear and her son losing a second school year and her rush to want to getting them registered because of the value for education that a lot of our families do hold, and that we just want to be reminded of, why we exist and why we're here. So with that being said, we're so excited to have this event because it's a proactive way for us to have a fresh start in the beginning of the school year. I've always loved September because it's a new year, truly. And one of my favorite things, I think one of the first things we all learn, one of the first things that we all learn when we're in elementary school is knowledge is power. So we're here to hear from the doctor and to have her also hear from us. If you did not get a postcard, please raise your hand and someone will grab you a postcard and you can write down your questions. After, first we'll have our executive director introduce the doctor and then she'll share some remarks, and then from there we'll begin to ask her questions, and then at the end she will stick around and we'll have the opportunity to mingle and speak with her as well. But just before I introduce our executive director, I just wanted to bring attention to some of the events and the programs that we have coming up here at PAC. So I have a calendar up, and so these are all, I can share this calendar to everyone's email, and what this is the County Commissioners Board of Ed meetings and the City Council meetings for the up until January, so to the end of the year. I want to encourage our community to start joining in on these meetings, and the best way to educate ourselves about civics and local politics is to really just to hear and learn and understand the language, because it's usually a language barrier that stops us from getting involved. And then we have on Tuesday, September 17th, we're going to have the Muslim Legal Fund of America come in and do a symposium, a Know Your Rights workshop at 6:30. And then on the 12th, so this Thursday, we're doing a voting demonstration here at the center between 11 and 1. So if you have any members of your family or anyone that you know that is a first-time voter and is a little intimidated because they're unaware of what it looks like to walk into that voting booth, we're doing a demonstration and a voting registration drive on the 12th on Thursday. And then we also have we have sign-ups for our PAC programs that begin in this fall. Arabic language classes, free English and Arabic conversations for adults, free citizenship for adults, Palestinian education for middle school and high school students, DEBCA for the kids. We have so many programs. That's really what it ties us to our culture, which is what we are most excited about doing. Feel free to scan this QR code on your way out or grab a flyer so that you can get your kids registered. But other than that, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. And I'll introduce Rania, our unbelievable executive director.
Thank you, Halima. Halima also did not introduce herself. So Halima is our civic engagement advocacy manager. She's been, if you've gotten a phone call from her or her team about voting in the last few months, it's been Halima. And she's also leading all our civic engagement efforts and actually was very instrumental in helping get this meeting done. So thanks, Halima. So with that, it's my honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Newell. We had the pleasure of meeting last year. We've been in very close contact with Dr. Newell and Dr. Nahid Bedoui as well. Our offices, our center has been in constant communication with Dr. Newell. We've been talking about many different issues, and Dr. Newell has always really received it with a lot of care and a lot of concern and a lot of attention to our needs. And one of our requests was for Dr. Newell to come to the center and meet our beautiful community and hear from our community, and we're so happy and honored to have you with us today. Just a little bit of a background about our history, which a lot of you already know about our history of Patterson Public Schools. We've been very close to Patterson Public Schools because a lot of our own constituents and students and participants are from Patterson Public Schools. So we've had a very close partnership with School 9, with Hani Hawadullah School, with School 25 as well, and with many other schools. We are looking to only continue to grow and increase our bond with the schools. One of our programs actually that we've always worked with is homework help. So we do a free homework help, which is tutoring for students. We actually have had many students come from School 9, also the PTOA. Yes, and School 9 is also very close contact with us. And we look forward to continuing to build our partnership. And Dr. Newell, I know, is fairly new in the position, but she's done a really great job in terms of reaching out to our community and hearing from our community and really finding ways to work together to continue to improve our Patterson Public Schools and continue to meet the needs of our community. So with that, I'm going to be formally introducing Dr. Newell, who is the superintendent of the Patterson Public Schools. She oversees the education of New Jersey's third largest school district with almost 30,000 students and 3,600 employees across 54 schools, as well as a number of collaborating preschool centers. Dr. Newell was recently the superintendent of schools for the Essex Regional Educational Services Commission for 7 years. The ERESC is a receiving school district that operates schools for special education, alternative education, and at-risk youth, as well as provides a wide range of services to students, families, and communities throughout several New Jersey counties. Before becoming superintendent of schools at the ERESC, Dr. Newell worked in Patterson Public Schools from 2010 to 2016, where she first served as Executive Director of Human Resource Services and then as the Chief Reform Innovations Officer. In these roles, she brought increasing accountability, created and streamlined processes and structures to ensure there was greater fidelity throughout the system. Data-driven decisions making was a critical component of the work that the district staff used and for the various stakeholders with whom the different departments interfaced. Under her leadership, strategic thinking and implementation were emphasized with a focus on research. Dr. Newell previously worked at the Newark Public Schools as Executive Director of School Transformation within the Office of Innovation and Change. She provided strategic direction and offered technical assistance to facilitate the success of new initiatives within schools. Throughout her time at NPS, she was an integral part of K-12 school reform throughout the district, data mining and analysis, curriculum development, implementing and monitoring of the district's strategic plan, reforming budget and human resource processes to ensure efficiency and accountability, working with different stakeholders, including union, leadership, and decision-making, and offering advice to the superintendent and members of the superintendent's cabinet. Dr. Newell's service in public education includes developing or leading school improvement initiatives designed to improve student achievement, as well as ensure and provide equitable access to quality education for all students. Dr. Newell has an enhanced understanding of the issues faced by large urban school districts and is motivated to find innovative ways to increase the capacity for learning and development via human capital resource management and talent development. She has led workshops demonstrating the benefits of research, including how to conduct and use the results of research to aid and inform instruction. She has also worked as an adjunct professor at Montclair State University, teaching graduate-level courses in educational leadership. Dr. Newell believes that a quality education is the right of every student and that all students will learn what given a safe, healthy, and supportive environment. She also believes that when faced with difficult decisions, doing the right thing for students will be the only thing that matters. Excellence will be the standard, and there will be high expectations for all students. This goal will be achieved with the collaboration, communication, and cooperation of parents, community, and educators as all stakeholders in the future of their children. Dr. Newell has earned her MS, MBA, and her PhD while working towards her master's degree. Dr. Newell has inducted into Gamma Sigma Delta Honor Society for Academic Excellence. She is the recipient of many awards and honors. And one thing I've learned from Dr. Newell is that She really is putting her heart into her work, and she's really trying to change the system and trying to change things for the long term. And we look forward to hearing from Dr. Newell. So just to give you guys an overview, Dr. Newell will be speaking, introducing herself and her work and everything that she's accomplished. Afterwards, we'll be taking questions and answers, but they need to be written out, and then we're going to be asking them. And then after that, you're more than once we finish and wrap up the event, you're welcome to come up to Dr. Newell and introduce yourself. Any questions with any of that?
Right, I've been there. I know the breathlessness. I get it. Hi, everyone. It's just so wonderful to be here. Thank you, Rania, for the invitation. We've had lots of conversations and hard conversations, I would say, right, Rania? Tear-jerking conversations, and just making sure that she understands where I'm coming from as a leader here of this beautiful district of 25,000+ students. And also looking at it from the lens as a mom, and I am unashamed when I say that if I go into a classroom and I see things I don't like, I come back and we have further conversations, because when I go into a classroom, I always say, if this is this good enough for my two children? If it's not good enough for my two children, then it's not good enough for anybody's children. And so that is where I normally start when I walk through a building. And I was at what, 8 buildings today. I was actually, I got a walk around, vice principal of school 25. She was gracious enough to walk me around. So one of the things that I try very hard to do is really just to walk around, just to see what's going on. Sometimes I don't get out of my office as much as I would like, but I do make it a priority to be out in the schools, to see what the needs are, to make sure that kids are learning. And there are quite a few things I want to talk about, including, for example, our students learning when we have these teacher vacancies. I also want to talk about the right sizing that was done during the year. So I have quite a few things that I would like to talk about. So thank you, Rania, for the introduction. I also wanted to introduce, I have 3 people here from my cabinet. Dr. Rodney Henderson, the Deputy Superintendent. Mr. David Cozart, Assistant Superintendent. And one of the things when it comes to leadership is a reflection on who it is that you hire. And my very, 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 very first hire when I came here as superintendent of schools was to hire Ms. Nahed Batterley. Ms. Batterley? And she joins Mr. Cozart as assistant superintendent. So briefly, I know that it was mentioned in the introduction. So I actually was here in Patterson Public Schools, so it's not even a welcome, it's a welcome back home. I was here from 2010 to 2016. I was recruited from Newark Public Schools. Dr. Donnie Evans, he requested to meet with me because he wanted a conversation, he called it, and I came over, I met with him, and at the end of the conversation, he said, I would like to hire you as the Executive Director of Human Resources. My story about getting some of these jobs, it's just, it's a calling and a path, and that's a whole other conversation. So I was here from 2010 to 2016, and in that time, I started overseeing the Human Resources Department. And then by the time I was done, I was Chief Reform and Innovations Officer, which is an assistant superintendent level. But I was in charge of HR, professional development, MIS, the assessment department. Let me see. I literally have to have like a cheat sheet. The attendance department, and we'll talk about attendance and why it's so important. IT. I also did instructional technology, transportation, and affirmative action. So that was about 9 or 10 different departments when I left. And I can say the good thing is that I was able to train a lot of people in terms of looking at the data, right? And so one of the things I also was the liaison to Harvard University for the Strategic Data Project, where I was in charge of the data and how we worked with Harvard University. And so, one of the things that, I talk about all the time is how are we doing this work? A lot of people will say I am tough, and I feel like it's okay if I'm tough, but I think that we have students' lives in our hands and they don't get a do-over. And so we have to do what's right by them from the first time. So as much as we can, we have to really put our shoulder to the wheel to make sure that we're doing things right on behalf of our children. And so at the end of my 6 years, in 2016, I went over to my first superintendency, Essex Regional, and that was back in Essex County. So I completed 7 years in Essex, and so I'm in my 9th year as superintendent because I did 1 year. It's okay, I have 2 little ones. So I did my first year from 2023 to 2024, and I'm now in my 2nd year here as superintendent of this amazing district. So I wanted to just briefly talk about the demographics. So, we have quite a bit of mobility. So I normally say we have about 27,000 children, but we do have kids who leave and come back. Sometimes they go overseas, and sometimes they go to different regions and come back. What I can say is that I'm looking at the data from last year to this year. We had 68% Hispanic this year. As of September 6th, we have 70.6% Hispanic, so we've gone up 2.6%. In terms of Black students, we've gone from 20% from last year to 16% this year, so we've gone down 4% in our district. In terms of Asian category classification, we were 6% last year, we're now 6.5% this year. And we also have 4% Caucasian last year, we're now 5% this year, so we've gone up 1%. We have our special ed, we have our ELLs, and I know that there's some of us here who do ELL education, it's so critical. And we have about 70% of our kids who would be considered economically disadvantaged. And I think I would venture to say that we probably have more, but folks sometimes don't want to really self-report their situation. Another thing too that has come up is since September of last year, we have seen an influx of 1,741 new students who speak no English. And that's brand new to our system since September of last year when we closed out June 30th. So I imagine that the numbers are going to keep on increasing over time. So briefly, I wanted to talk about the academics because I know that you all are very interested in the academics of our students. And, we've had some challenges here in Patterson, which we're aware of. Our graduation rates, although they are quite high because we have our kids come through something called credit recovery. I'm not sure if you all know what credit recovery is. It's a way to recover credit if you're short of credits. But when we look at the state assessment for our 11th graders, and it's called the NJ, the New Jersey Graduate Proficiency Assessment. I am an immigrant. There's some words that are hard. Our numbers are not quite reflective of our graduation rate. So we may have a graduation rate of 82%, but when I look at how our kids have done in terms of passing the assessment, for ELA, for English language, we have 38% who have passed, and for math, we have 11% who have passed the assessment. but when we look at our graduation rates, we see such a high graduation rate. So, you know, some of those things are what we're looking at to say, how can we get our kids to pass the test, right? And so it's good to have credit recovery, but that's not something that we should have to depend on, right? Credit recovery is something, it's like almost an outlier. You do it in an emergency. But when you have an entire district doing credit recovery, or majority of them doing credit recovery, that's questionable, and that's something that we need to really look further into. So I have also been tasked, we had a lot of the work is based on the strategic plan, and I know that some of you all were worked on it, and this was from 2019 to 2023. And so, you know, the 4 goals are teaching and learning, infrastructure, and I know you all know that we have some facilities issues, quite a few facilities issues. The first month I was here is when the ceiling fell in on at school 3, and I was like, seriously? You couldn't have fallen in like a month before I came? You had to do this while I'm here? But we have, you know, we do have some infrastructure issues. We have, I think, almost 25 of our buildings are 100 years old or more. So think about that. If you have a home that's 100 years old, you know, it rains and you see the paint just slide down the wall, you know, there's flooding, there's just so many different things. There's shifting in the foundation. So we have 25 schools that are like 100 years old. We also have some that are like between 75 and 99 years old, right? So we have like, what, 10 of those. So they're like almost in the same category as well. So, you know, that's always something top of mind, because when I walk into a building too, I say, is this building safe? Is this building safe? And, you know, is it safe for our staff? Is it safe for our kids? Because that's something that's also top of mind. Another thing too is, you know, the third strand, communications and connections. So me being here a part of this community, and, you know, thank you so much for the warm welcome, because you all need to be connected to the work that we're doing, right? It can't be us against them. We're all under one big umbrella, Patterson Public Schools, and we know that we need all of these layers of support, and we need your support to be able to really get things moving. And then the last thing is social emotional learning. That was the 4th part of the strategic plan, making sure that we are really honing in on the needs of, you know, what our students are. So what our students need. So I can tell you in October of last year, you know, I had conversations with Rania because we wanted to make sure that we were supporting our students and making sure that they had everything they needed. You know, one of the things I always say is, and I've said it before, the decision is always easiest for the person who doesn't make the decision. And so I'll say it again. The decision is always easiest for the person who doesn't make the decision. So, you know, you'll get feedback. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Because, you know, and in the moment, you're literally trying to do the best you can with the information you have and with the resources you have. And so that is why it's always so good to get additional input. You know, I speak with Rania because I need to hear her story, hear her, you know, tell me what's going on. Otherwise, when I'm making the decision, I could literally be ignoring needs that I don't even know exist. And so this is why, you know, these types of partnerships are so important, because I need to be talking and communicating and being involved in everything that's going on. So, you know, some of the work that we're trying to do is really just have, first of all, Patterson have a better image. You know, when people think about Patterson, when I was leaving Essex County, I had quite a few people said, "Are you crazy? You're going to Patterson?" I said, "Patterson's like the best place on the planet. Like, it's just like." I just, you know, and I think the reason why Patterson resonates so much with me is because I came here as an immigrant, right? I came here when I was 13. So when I walk through, you know, and I go to the different schools and I see that rich mosaic of individuals, and I think to myself, they could have my story. You know what I mean? They could come here just brought here at 13, have to make new friends. have kids make fun of you, they just call me, different things, because I sounded different, looked different. And so, when I walk through and I feel so blessed to be back in Patterson because I understand the story. I understand the immigrant story. I understand being on the phone, talking to family members back home. I mean, that is my life and that is my story. And so, one of the things that, I'm just so committed to making sure that we can do the best thing that we can for Patterson, whatever it takes. However, like late meetings, however many partnerships, because I truly believe that our kids deserve the very, very best. I feel like we have phenomenal kids. This morning when I was in the class and, we were first floor, second floor, and it's all steps. But I go in the class and they're like, okay, come on, Dr. Newell, we gotta go. And I'm just like, no, because I feel that these kids are our future. I say to so many people, our next president could be coming from Patterson. Our next doctor, engineer, carpenter, electrician, lawyer, judge, you name it. We have all the potential to have those individuals here. It's up to us as the adults to really pull that genius out of our students because I know that they have it. And so I have been tasked by the board to really look across the entire spectrum of Patterson Public Schools, to look across the entire continuum, looking from early childhood all the way up to high school. What are we doing at every step? What are we doing at every level? And really just keeping a focus on, do we have the right structures in place? Do we have the right systems in place? What is our accountability structure like? And the fact of the matter is, I do believe in accountability. My team will tell you that I don't mind writing people up. I think that we have to be accountable to our kids. We also have to be accountable to the tax dollars. And so, I feel that we have to be serious about this work. These are children's lives and we can't be messing around. And so that is something that I am very, very committed to. I believe that we should have very high standards. Why shouldn't we have high standards for our kids? When I think about, I have, so I can say this, I have two children, one who is now a junior in college and the younger one is a freshman. So a daughter who's a junior and a freshman, my son. And, so each are gifted very differently. And, I have had to give a lot more support to my younger child. And, when folks say very, just very openly, oh, I don't think he can learn, oh, wait a minute. So when I tell you that I take this work personally, it's because I am a mom who's had to say, okay, well, we know that this is not working. We need another meeting, another child study team meeting, and now we're gonna try this, resource, self-contained inclusion, we've done it all. And so I totally understand when we have kids who we are trying to find the right environment for them. And I think it is our duty, it is our mission, and it's the children's right to have the best education. They don't choose their zip code. So it's up to us to do what's right by our kids. And so when people think, I know that folks think that I can be difficult. I wouldn't say I'm difficult, but I just have very high expectations because I know our kids are brilliant. And, within that, the child who could be jumping all over the place is because he's completely bored. He could be just brilliant, completely bored, and we're not reaching them. So, one of the things that we have to do is really just try to figure out how we can do whatever we can to reach our kids. So when I first came, one of the things that I first did was I restructured how we did with my executive team on my cabinet. And so we had, the way it was set up, I felt like it was not the most efficient. And so I asked the board if I could have an additional assistant superintendent. So we had a vacancy in an assistant superintendency and I asked for another one. So I completely restructured how we do our assistant superintendency and how they do the reporting. So right now we have, and this is how it will be, 3 assistant superintendents for the K-8s, right? So each of them has about 10 to 12 schools, and then we have one who is the high school, right? And so my hope is if I'm in a school over this side of town in 3rd grade, and I get transferred or mom has to move to the other side of town in 3rd grade, I am picking up exactly where I left off. It should not look like it's something completely foreign to me. And so one of the things that we're trying to do is just streamline, because if we make things more efficient and make things more consistent, you know, our teachers will understand what we're doing, all of our staff members will understand what we're doing, and most importantly, our children won't feel that they're losing something from going from one classroom to the other. You know, and so I hired for that vacancy, the assistant superintendent for the high schools, and then as I mentioned, my very first assistant superintendent role that I filled was Ms. Badaway. And so we have been really looking across the system to make improvements every single day, every day. We brought in coaches to make sure that we're doing professional development. We've been looking at the transcript review process to make sure that by the time a child gets to say 10th grade, that we're not like, wait a minute, you don't have enough credits, right? We want to make sure that we are really just making sure that our kids are on schedule to graduate, and just, you know, really making sure that we can do all that we can. Now, we do have some challenges that are really out of our hands. I would like to talk about the teacher vacancy issue. So when I came last year in July of 2023, we had a little bit under 200 teacher vacancies. Right now, as we started the school year, we're down to 148. So, you know, we're chipping away at it. We gain teachers, we lose teachers, attrition, we have teachers who retire, resign, move on. And, you know, so during the school year, we had so many vacancies that I said to Cabinet, I said, do we have teachers within our system who may not have a full load, or who we can move to another school? Because at that point, we had students who had not seen a certified teacher for 2 years. And so I know that it was not well received when I did the right sizing, which we call equity balancing, because really what we're doing is equitably balancing the resources across the system. So I know that it was a very, very hard decision. You know, we had folks who were very upset. I saw all the emails. I received all of them. We had folks who came to the board meeting because they were upset, and I understand. But I also think to myself, if I was a mom to a child who had not had a teacher for 2 years, would I be okay with that? And so those are some of the things that I think about, you know, like, granted, it caused some turmoil because teachers had to move, and at the end of it, I don't think we had 20, it probably was 18. We didn't have that many teachers, but I understand that it was upsetting. But you know, when I think about, we have kids who have not had a certified teacher, it's a very, very hard decision to make. And so what we did is we combined some of our classrooms, and we found teachers who did not have a full schedule. And so what we wanted to do was just make sure that, you know, even if we affected a school, we did not leave that school without a teacher for the classroom. So that means that if we moved a teacher, I didn't leave a classroom without a teacher. But I understand in the middle of the school year, to make such a decision was a very, very hard decision. But I was willing to make that decision because I feel that if they could at least have 4 months of an education, you know, it's giving them something as opposed to them having subs swapping out ever so often. And so that was a tough decision, but I felt that, you know, for the children's sake, this is something that we had to do. And so right now, one of the things that we're working on is, just making sure that we can accelerate how we are doing our achievement. So Deputy Superintendent Dr. Henderson has been really working closely with the assistant superintendents. We had a superintendent's institute where we brought in all of the administrative team. I think we had like over 200 people. Those were principals, directors, supervisors, vice principals, really just doing a lot of in-depth coaching. And so this has to be ongoing coaching that we have to do. We have to do a lot of professional development. And I can say we also had a time where we took the principals out and we gave them 2 days of just them of coaching. One of the things that I am aware of and that we're working on with Dr. Henderson and the assistant superintendents is looking at how we provide professional development. So we do not have right now a professional development department. That was phased out about 4 years ago. And so I think professional development is critical because it's really showing how much you pour into your students, into your teachers who can then pour into the students. And so we do have professional development, but not a cohesive department, which is what I think is also very critical. So that is something that we're also looking at because we have to bring it back. And decisions that were made prior to me being here, and my job is to really just say, for moving forward, this is how we have to do it. And a lot of the work that we do, I just want you to know that it's really just based on theory and best practices. I don't get up and say, oh, Dr. Newell has a hunch this morning and this is what we're going to do. It's actually based on what the research and the data tells us that's working. I will never use Patterson Public Schools as a guinea pig. A lot of what we bring to the table is based on what best practices and research tells us. And so that is what we're working on right now. We have 5 levers for accelerating achievement, and Dr. Henderson is the lead on that. And one is human resources. And so how are we hiring our staff members? We know that the issue of teacher shortage is not even a New Jersey issue. We know it's a nationwide issue, right? I don't think I have one colleague who can say I have full staff. And so we know that is a nationwide issue. How are we bringing in folks? How are we keeping them? How are we pouring into them that they can feel comfortable and that they want to stay here rather than jump over the fence to find another position? The next thing is data literacy. And so, do our staff members understand the data that's in front of them, right? And my feeling is it's okay. It's okay if they don't understand the data. It's our job just to make sure that they do understand the data. So we have to be the ultimate teachers, right? Because everybody has different skills. Everybody has different skills. So, that's the second piece of it, data literacy, making sure that we are teaching, that they understand. When they see the data, we have a ton of data here in the district. For those who work in the district, we got a ton of data, ton. Do we know what we're looking at, right? And once you look at it, do you know how you can use it to really move the needle with our students? The next thing is principal capacity. We're really being very deliberate in how we give training to our principals. It's not just to check a box and say, okay, well, we did that because we have 3 hours on a Friday afternoon. We really want to be very, very specific in how we're pouring into our principals to make sure that our principals can then take that information and then, pour it into their staff members. And then the next thing is staff capacity. How are we training the vice principals, supervisors, chairpersons, teachers? How are we using that time to make sure that it is productive? And so, when I get feedback that a professional development may not be, well, even with all this, sometimes I get feedback that the professional development may not be on the level, then I say, okay, we got to go back to the drawing board so we don't do this again. Because it's not just for people to be sitting there and just, taking, letting the time go by. And then finally, and this is where you all come in, parental support. That's the 5th one. I need you guys. I need all of your help. We need the parents to be equal partners in this work, because it's a lot of work that we have to do. You know, our students, you know, we have to be the role model for our students. I need for the parents, the community, to say to the kids, every day you have to show up to school. Every day you have to show up to school. Don't show up to school late. You have to show up to school every day and on time. You know, the fact of the matter is our numbers are getting better in terms of the average daily attendance. So in 2022, 2023, the year before I came, we were at 88.8%, and then this past year, it was at 89.93. Call it 90%, because we're really trying to be aggressive in calling and, you know, calling the home and saying, you need to send Johnny to school. Where is Mary? Why is Mary not here? And so we've really been doing a lot of social media blasts, a lot of PR and publicity, and sending home flyers and calling, because I don't think parents understand that, you know, going to school every day, it's like, it's a habit that children form, right? And so it's like brushing your teeth. It's something that they wind up, they say, oh, okay, I do this in the morning, I do this midday if they want, I do this at night. But the one thing they know is I don't go to bed without brushing my teeth. Like, you have to really drum it into them that going to school every day is your habit. That's your job. Mom and dad have a job, that's your job. And then when you get to school, you need to learn something and behave while you're at it. So, you know, but it's very, very important that we have our students stay, you know, they show up and they stay at school. And, you know, every day attendance, it matters. And it's critical for our kids to be here. And, you know, I just want to say, just very briefly, because I'm watching the time, absenteeism is the leading cause of educational inequity, okay? So if a child misses one day of school, they miss 6.5 hours, and that is 390 minutes in one day. And so if they miss 10% or more days, so each school year we have the minimum 180 school days. So if they lose 10% or more, so if they lose 18 days or more, that can translate into, by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're unable to master reading. And by the time they get into 6th grade, they're failing their subjects. And by the time they get into 9th grade, they've dropped out of school. And then, you know, there's enough research about the prison pipeline. You know, we are literally in the middle of it if we don't tell our kids you need to come to school, because we know what's out there in the streets, and so we need for our kids to be coming to school every single day. And so, you know, one of the things that I am unapologetic in is saying that we have to really just work together with our parents, our larger community, you know, making sure that we do all that we can to make sure our students succeed and thrive. I know that it's very possible. I stand before you, as I said, as an immigrant, and, you know, here I am, superintendent of schools with a doctorate. You know, so it can be done, but we have to push our kids. And I tell my kids, we're not friends. We're not friends. You all may be, you know, born here and you see your other friends who have different parenting styles, but you're Caribbean people, and there's high expectations, and don't come to me with that nonsense, you know? And so I'm very firm with my kids, because at the end of the day, you know, it's like, it's their life, right? We already have our careers, we have to help our kids get theirs. And so with that, I close, and I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Newell, for helping to give us context on the work that you've done so far and your own story. And also, one of the things that we're working here at PAC is you mentioned data literacy, and you mentioned, you know, the demographics of the district is we're working tirelessly to make sure that we're properly counted due to the fact that as a group and as a people, we have been thus far. So we worked on getting us on the census, and we're continuing to get our community counted so that we can get the proper resources and become part of those numbers as well. Yes, I just want to ask some of these questions. If anyone has any additional questions, just raise them in the air, and Sarah will come and grab them. And then if we have time, we can go ahead and we can answer them after the ones I have so far. So the first question that we have for you is, what accomplishment are you most proud of as the superintendent so far?
So I think, so there've been quite a few. I think the restructuring how we did our credit recovery was really something that I was very proud of, because we had a system where there was no accountability with our kids when they did credit recovery. So they could literally be on their computer, completely unmonitored, and just, not really being as rigorous. So we completely restructured it. And so I was very clear that our kids need to graduate the right way. So if they're doing credit recovery, they have to go through the classes, they have to take the assessments. If they're taking a test, they have to be in person with a teacher. And so I think that was one of, among many others, but I think that was the one that we've completely restructured how we've done that.
I think that we can all agree that accountability is incredibly important to our community for sure. So thank you for that. What can this community do to advocate at the state level to support our Patterson Public Schools?
So we have so many needs here in Patterson, and I think just advocating for. I feel that a lot of times folks underrate Patterson, and people really need to know that it's like the phoenix rising from the ashes, and there's just so much good here. So I think the more people are aware of Patterson, the more advocacy, whatever that looks like. I would love for more reading, more resources into anything educational for the district. As I mentioned, we have a lot of facilities issues. So, I know that there are different groups who have gone down to Trenton to advocate for more money for our facilities, because our facilities are, they're not as good as I would like them to be. And so anytime it rains, I just say, oh, okay, and just, I'm prayerful that, paint doesn't slide down and bricks fall off and things like that.
Absolutely.
We've had that, yeah.
Yeah, we definitely want to make sure that the funds that are being pushed into our community is being used in a manner in which we support.
Yeah.
So that's we'll continue to focus on our advocacy in that way for sure. What path can teachers in our community take to land more administrative positions? We have a lot of educators in the room, so I think this is a very important question because I know that we definitely want to continue to be able to foster that growth in the leaders that we have here.
So that's a great question, because I'm always looking for excellent leaders. I think be persistent is one. We get a lot of resumes that come through, and one of the things, for example, is I like to, when I get the resumes, I like to look at the resumes for folks who are working in district. I feel that, sometimes we have folks who we may have overlooked, and so be persistent, keep applying, send an email, because, you have to be in it. Sometimes I've had people literally say, Dr. Newell, I applied for so-and-so, and I said, okay, I have no idea, but, I'll go and I'll just see if the resume came through. Be persistent, because, we need good people, and I don't want folks to be discouraged because there are not enough positions, and then they choose to go to another district because there's more openings. So, yeah.
So you
Be
recommend,
persistent.
so you recommend reaching out to you and saying, hey, I'm going to flag my resume for you.
Yeah.
I've been applying.
Yeah.
What resources do you have available for students and families affected by the genocide in Gaza?
So we have been, we have a lot of supports, and that's one of the things that I have been, speaking with Rania to make sure that we're doing things the right way. Because sometimes when you're ignorant, it's not that you don't care, it's just that you don't know. And so when, if I've missed it, believe me, Rania, she keeps me on my toes, but in a good way, because, I need to know, I need to know. And, whenever I consider Rania to be my contact, so if I am, like slipping, she's gonna tell me because she's been my contact. And so, I want to make sure that we have those supports in place. We did a lot of work, like with our website, with making sure that there's the right contact, the phone numbers, the agencies, that folks who were in distress or who needed additional support, that we had that available to them.
And honestly, to piggyback off that question as well, you mentioned professional development
Yes.
for teachers. Do you have any plans, or would you be willing to implement training or guidelines for educators on how to approach Palestinian students in the classroom?
Yeah, so I think we've been open about that. I don't think I believe that folks should express how they feel. And I know that when things first started last year, I think one of the things that, there is what's the black and white,
Kafia.
sorry. And folks were like, how do you feel about the kids wearing it? And I said, that's fine. I believe in self-expression. And so, I think that we just have to support our kids. At our graduation, I went through the speeches, and we had some graduates who talked to the issue, and I said, that's how they feel. And so, it was our valedictorians, and they spoke. And I said, that's how they felt, and they came to the mic at their graduation at Hinchliffe. And I read the graduation speeches before, and, they said their speech. I feel that kids, we have to raise a group of kids who know themselves and who have their own opinion. I think that we are in a country where we see that things are, being censored all the time, in different things with like library books and things like that. So, there are just some things that I feel like kids, they have to come into their own, and I think this is the best place for that to happen.
So how are we training our educators to ensure that our students are able to feel safe enough to express themselves?
Yes, so thank you for redirecting me. So that, no, because I get, no, but I think it starts with leadership, right? It starts with leadership. And so I know that, there have been a lot of uncomfortable conversations, but I think it needs to happen. I know that some of the staff members have reached out to us because they don't know how to fully handle a situation, or, if they're doing the right thing in the classroom to make sure that kids are feeling safe and kids are feeling comfortable. But I think the teachers, we have been providing training, and if there's a need to do more training of our teachers so our kids feel safe, then that is something that should come to me, because, that is why we're here, to make sure that the teachers know what they're supposed to be doing in the classroom with these kids so the kids feel safe. And so, so, I think that is definitely something that we as the adults need to make sure that our kids feel safe. And if there's additional training that's needed, bring that to my attention, and we'll make sure that that's done.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely think we have a lot of resources here in this room that would be very willing to help in terms of implementing that. So thank you.
Oh, sure.
And this is the whole point of the conversation,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
we're very
absolutely.
happy about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then this is a little lengthy. I'm sorry, I didn't know how to reword it. Similarly, how the ban of critical race theory has negatively impacted racial justice work. How do we protect Palestinian educators and students from any bias in our curriculum that silences Palestinian Americans' abilities to work towards our own racial justice.
Mhm. So, the goal of a school district and an educational institution, which is what we are, is to be able to really do that critical thinking and have those critical conversations. So, I don't know if that's happening in our school district, and if it is, that's something that I think we should know about, because we really need to have further conversations. I do feel that children should be able to feel that they belong and that the representation is such where the teachers don't make them feel that they should not have a voice.
Yes.
I feel that our students, wherever they come from, should be able to say, this is who I am, and be proud of it without feeling some type of shame, embarrassment, or feel that they're hidden and they're not seen. I think that is something that, as we are grooming the next group of kids to go out into society and to be leaders. So we have to really acknowledge them, acknowledge who they are, however and whoever they are. And so I think that is something that has to be part of the whole conversation. So, we have to also make sure that our children feel comfortable, that they can express who they are without feeling that they're going to be silenced, because that is not what Patterson Public Schools is all about.
Yeah, and not just the students, but I believe our educators as well. I think I know that there's been a lot of fear in the last year, especially in terms of what our educators feel comfortable in being able to express in the classroom, because it has been such a tense time for us this past year. So, do we have other questions? Yes. How can we cater education to the various levels students may be at? How can we individualize education to fit the learning styles and needs of our students?
So, I have my assistant superintendents here. So we know that our kids learn at different paces, and I do believe that we should be able to differentiate our instruction. We have kids who come to us from the spectrum, right? And it's up to the educators to be able to say, okay, Johnny may need a little bit of help in something, so I'll do small group and I'll take a group and I'll work with them. However, we have, another group that's flying high and they can do it. So, we have gifted teachers here, gifted staff members. Some of the professional development that we are focused on and that we started working this year in particular is just to make sure that our teachers know that not all of them are in the same bucket, right? How do you differentiate the learning? How do you go through, they take an assessment, you see where each child is, you go back, you reteach. For those who have moved on, you can also, as they've moved on, you teach them, but you also come back and realize that you have to give them a little bit more instruction, right? And so it is a master art for some of our teachers, and some of them do it effortlessly. Where are my teachers in the classroom?
Yeah.
Right? So, but you can have a group of 20 kids and see that they're just and you just have to group them. But I have so much confidence in our teachers that they can do it. We have about 2,100 teachers in the district, and I just feel that they can pull that out of our students.
Thank you. Can we ask a couple more? How can parents/students learn about different high schools in the district? And how can they be aware of the different programs offered at the different high schools, like STEM, culinary, medical, etc.?
So that's a really good question. I feel across the board that Patterson Public Schools has not done the best job of branding and self-branding, right? One of the things that, I feel that we have a lot of parents who will think automatically to go outside the district. So I know that we have a lot of kids who are looking to go to, the technical school on the hill, which I won't say the name. So here's the thing. Some folks have asked me how I feel about that. As a mom, I feel that parents have choice, right? Parents have choice. And then do we in Patterson Public Schools have the best product? I wouldn't necessarily say we do at this moment, right? We are working on getting Patterson Public Schools to be a top tier school district. But we have other schools that do a very good job of advertising, of showcasing all of their different academies. And so that is something that we need to do a better job. And so the assistant superintendent of the high schools, that is her task, to make sure that students and parents know what's happening at John F. Kennedy, what's happening at Eastside, how do I get into international, how do I get through the lottery program for another school, how do I get through the interview process at this school, what's going on at the cosmetology pathway up at Eastside High. So we have to do a much better job, and so we are working on it, but you shouldn't have to be searching to find out what the different schools do here in Patterson Public Schools. And so, we are a work in progress, but we're working on that. So that's an excellent question, because the assistant superintendent of high school, she's been tasked with making sure that we do a better job of advertising what we offer.
Is there a way that we can help support that effort?
Absolutely. So are you going to be around in the next few weeks?
We have an entire staff that's trying not to let her. Not because Ronnie is really one of the most amazing people I think I've ever met. She's on everything. I said, on my best day, I don't match her worst day. So,
I think this is why I think these partnerships working here is so important, because working with everyone here, so that when we do make changes and updates and improve what we're doing, that you all know what it is. Because I know that, there is a lot of confusion. How do I get into P-Tech? How do I get into the STEAM program? So those are some of the things that parents do want to know. And we don't have something that's just right there. And so that's something that we're working on, for sure.
And then Arabs are lumped in with the Caucasian community due to lack of proper count and representation of our Arab community.
Yes.
How are you and your executive team working to count our Arab population and find out our needs?
So that's a very tough question, because the way we do the demographic is it's pretty much the state.
Yeah.
It's the state standard how we do that sign off. So that's a question that right here I can't quite answer, and
Thank you for being honest about that.
That's the one thing people. I'm a straight shooter. If I don't know, I'm not gonna make up the answer. So it's something I have to think about further.
Thank you.
Yeah, because when I think about, I'm sorry. I know you're I thought you were done, but I'm not. When I think about the data, right? Let me just tell you an example. Sorry. When I think about so I listed off the data, and it said 5% Caucasian, 6.5% Asian. I don't know what that means. I don't know who is who, the representation. Yeah. It's just, that is just call it generic.
Yeah,
I could say.
Exactly.
When I think about where it says Black or, African American, we have, for example, I would be considered in some areas Jamaican American, not necessarily African American. So I get it. So I'd have to think about that and get back to you on that one.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Do we have any more questions? One more? I think one more question.
Okay.
Many teachers feel like we have not gotten training focused on Gaza or Palestine on how to address our students. How can we address this?
So that's similar to there was a prior question.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
a prior question about if there's anything I think in terms of professional development, but I think maybe this question is more touching upon like what's the best way as a person who's getting paid by by you and your staff, how can they best approach the conversation with the staff? Is that I feel like I hope I'm capturing that.
So I think the question was specific about like professional development for the staff. So I know like, for example, we've had conversations about different things that the executive team is doing. So maybe sharing that and then explaining specific professional development opportunities for the teaching staff.
Ms. Bannerman, if you sure.
Not at all.
She's Lori.
Yeah. Awesome. Yes.
Hello everyone, I just wanted to share some of the efforts that the district's been doing related to professional development for staff and even the leadership team. And it doesn't only apply to the crisis, the Palestinian crisis, but also, overall. So we had a partnership with Montclair State University, and there was a series of sessions that's been conducted, professional development for the leaders and for the teachers as well. And it focused on achieving equity, and also a whole year was focused on unconscious bias. So, and that not only prepared our educators for how to address that and be able to, reflect on themselves if they are biased somehow and they don't even realize it. And it applies to everyone. African Americans, Palestinians, whoever in the classroom and how they're dealing with it. The leadership as well, the principals, vice principals, directors, they were trained on that, on how they can provide instruction and resources that are focused on achieving that kind of equity and be careful and aware of their unconscious bias and making sure that they're cleaning or purifying the educational environment that would be to achieve equity among all. But what I mean by equity is that addressing the needs no matter what, like addressing every child according to what they need. This is for professional development. In addition to that, the resources specifically about how we are, empowering our Palestinian students in the classroom or handling the situation. We do have on our website, and this is something that we created last year, the Healing Hub, which is rich of all kinds of resources that we're offering in the district, and those specific resources to educators and to parents as well about how we can discuss the Palestinian struggle in the classroom, specific strategies, and some, discussing and even for parents as well. There are resources that are posted in the Healing Hub to parents about how they can address that at home. For professional development for teachers as well. Last year, because we had this conversation, several conversations with Rania, we created small group sessions where we created specific sessions in specific schools based on needs. So we didn't find it a need to do that in all schools, but specific schools according to how the educators wanted to be heard, because it's not just the students, it's not the parents, educators as well, Palestinian educators, they were going through a difficult time last year. We were all going through a difficult time. I was going through a crisis as well. So we wanted that kind of support. We wanted a platform where we can share how we feel and what we're gonna do. So these circles were conducted last year. I'm not sure if we need it again this year. We can check based on needs. If there are additional sessions that we can, that you're proposing and you're suggesting, please, we're welcome and open to that. I know that a couple of years ago, actually right after the pandemic, we also conducted a professional development series for our teachers called Courageous Conversations. And the Courageous Conversation was focused on how educating our educators on how to handle difficult conversations in the classroom. And definitely discussing what's happening right now in Palestine is one of the difficult conversations that they need to be prepared for. So that, maybe we need to do a refresher, but this is something that we did conduct, and we're looking, and this is something that I actually took a note while I'm sitting here. Maybe we can do a refresher on having courageous conversation. I mean, these are just examples of some of the professional development that we've been providing to our teachers, educators, and also our leaders. But definitely that's not the end of it. We're definitely open to even doing more. I think I covered what I was covered. I mean, we're still open to any suggestions that you may have, of course. I hope I answered them.
We have two more questions. Oh, yes, thank you. We have two more questions, and then we'll close out and give you all an opportunity just to chat with the doctor yourself. And thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to building this bridge with you and your staff. It's really, this is what makes me the happiest when it comes to community organizing, because this is as close as it gets, is being able to directly speak to our elected officials. So thank you. Is it true that the district is going to take away holidays from the calendar?
Okay. I was thinking of other questions, but okay, so let's talk about it. I am not opposed to taking away holidays from the calendar. Let me just say this. When we were building the calendar for this school year, one of the things I was looking at is how many days off we have as a district. And then I did a comparison to the surrounding school districts. I told my team, I want to know, before we do our day one of the state assessments, how many days of instruction did we have as Patterson Public Schools, right? So the state assessments start in May, that first week in May. So I said, count back, how many days of instruction did we have? And our numbers, I think, were like 136 days of instruction. You know, we have Veterans Day, Columbus Day, you know, we have a lot. And then we did a comparison, Newark, Jersey City, Elizabeth, Clifton, Passaic, others around. And while we were at like 136, 137, I don't remember the exact number, surrounding districts had given their students like 145 days of instruction before that first state assessment. That's 9 days. That's almost 2 weeks additional instruction before the state assessments. And so I am not opposed to folks having a good time and having their vacation and all of that. But what I'm looking at is, how can we front load as many days of instruction before we do our state assessments? To me, it makes no sense to go to June 28th of a school district when it's, as I mentioned, we have all these buildings that have no AC. It's like 100 degrees in those buildings, and they're in the buildings now for like 3 additional weeks. And so what I'm trying to do is cover 2 things at the same time. Get people to start their vacation, their summer vacation early, right? And also get folks to have as many days of instruction as possible before we sit down for that first day of the state assessment. So I'm so glad that question came up, because I don't want people to think that I don't enjoy vacations and holidays. But what I'm trying to do is how much instruction can we infuse into the schools before the first day of the state assessments? Because unfortunately, it's not that we're not trying to teach the test or whatever, but I also, when I compare how many days of instruction we have, and some of these days, by the way, when I say 136, 137, a lot of those days, quite a bit of those days, I wish I had the calendar from last year, were half days. Our kids were having half days. So, you know, it's like, we need for the kids to be in the classroom, continuous, week after week after week after week. When we have, you know, Monday, Tuesday, then a break for whatever the holiday. Then we come back Thursday, then we have a half day Friday. I mean, you know, you teachers, you know, it's disruptive. You have to really go back and refresh to move forward. And so I'm seeing what other districts are doing in terms of having continuous teaching all the way through until the state assessments. I also feel that for health and safety, I don't want folks in the building where there's no air conditioning. I just don't want it. I don't want it till June 30th, June 28th, June 27th. I don't want it. I know I don't want to be in those buildings. I don't want you all to be in the buildings. I don't want the kids to be in the buildings because it's uncomfortable. So, you know, I'm trying to cover a couple of things at the same time. So I'm not an ogre, I'm not a dragon, I'm just trying I'm trying to be, and I think when people don't know the thinking that goes behind the decision, I see how things spin out of control. But I'm really trying to do what's best for our students and for our staff members.
And then we'll have one more question and then we'll close it out. Thank you so much for answering all these questions.
Sure.
Really appreciate it. And thank you all for asking the questions. Really appreciate everyone being here. How can we help stop our teachers leaving to other districts? We've lost 3 teachers to other districts because of the wrong sizing.
So that's a really great question. And one of the things that's very hard for me is to know that when we've had teachers who are, you know, we've identified, and I just want to let me be clear that we gave the principals the choice to choose who they wanted to be accessed. And it's a hard choice. It's a very, very difficult choice. At the same time, it pains my heart to know that if a teacher has an option to go into a school that they may not like as much, that they'd rather just leave the district. I feel that we are one Patterson and we're not a tale, you know, of 2 cities. And so that is something that we have a lot of work to do, the administrators, myself, the cabinet, to really get all the schools at a level where if there is a transfer that people don't say, I'm not going to that side of town, absolutely not, I'd rather leave the district. You know, and it does pain my heart because I think, when I think of those students who have not had a teacher for 2 years, I don't know what is the best decision. I look at it as I would want my child to have a teacher, and so it's a gamble when you move someone because they say, because I'm thinking, okay, maybe you can give the child 4 months of instruction, and then you know we also know that there is a teacher shortage, you know, nationwide, that they can go to another district. So it is a hard question for folks to leave the district, and you know we're just trying to make sure all the schools are at a level that if folks have to go to another school, that they won't want to leave the district.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for attending this evening. As a civic engagement manager, I would be remiss if I didn't say that if this amount of people showed up to a city council meeting, we would be, and it's like they're like once a month, we would have a lot of different policies in place. I think that we should keep that in mind as election season is coming up. We also have 3 local elections in November. Everyone in this room, there's about 50 people here. That's like, I think about a third of the 6th ward that's gone out to vote. So if you look at that, if everyone in this room voted on the local elections, I think politics would be very different here. So just keep that in mind. We also have 3 forums coming up for all of those candidates to be introduced to the community, so that we can do the same thing that we're doing today, asking questions, getting to know the candidates so that we can make informed decisions, so that we are focusing on our needs here and back at home as well. So thank you guys so much. But thank you to the GOT team for making calls and getting people out here. Thank you to Miss Saha Abdallah. I said it right, and then I got nervous about it. Abdallah and Khaloud Abdahadi, PTO president, and Wajdan Abdallah for also getting people out here as well. And we want to send you a gift as well for joining us today.
Picture together.
Yeah, can we get one with everyone in the background too?
Everyone in the background, one selfie.
Yes.
Do you mind taking a picture? Oh, sure, we could do everyone in the
Is
background.
everyone okay being photographed? If not, it's okay. Just raise your hand and then we just. Okay.